Fellas, in the first video of the day, we're going to be talking about the NBA play-in tournament, specifically some thoughts that Luka shared with us lately about the play-in tournament, about how he doesn't think it's a good idea. It's kind of just going to spark a general conversation about the play-in stuff. I really like it. I think it's super fun, and I'm going to kind of say some stuff in disagreement with what Luka brought up recently again about the NBA's new play-in tournament. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every single day on this channel, so it's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. If that's what you're looking for, then consider subscribing. If you're new here, by the way, what's up? My name is Tucker. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well, and you can check me out at various socials in a Linktree link down in the description below. With those things said, let's talk about it. So Luka made some comments recently basically saying, what's the point of a play-in tournament? For the longest time, it's been the top 8 seeds make the playoffs. You play 72 games to determine who's going to make the playoffs, and then in 2 games you could be out. Despite being a 7 seed against a 10 seed, you could miss the playoffs just because of 2 games, and anything could impact those 2 individual games and provide them way more weight over the 72 that you just played, i.e. protocol issues, i.e. injury issues, whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying he's wrong. It does in a vacuum conceptually seem odd that you would weigh so much more heavily 2 games than you would 72. But if that's your argument, then you could also make the case that the playoffs as a whole are not a great idea because you played 72 games and then one team is at the top and then you play 4 different 7-game series to decide who's going to win the title. So that doesn't really connect based off the way that the NBA is already doing things. And ultimately, it might not be the fairest way for the NBA to decide who gets the 7th and the 8th seeds in each conference, but that's not really what they're going for. This is not about fairness. The league is not looking at this and thinking, you know what, what's the best way we can figure out who gets the 7 and 8 seed? There are other agendas at play here, and all of them, I think, for the most part, are positive either for the experience of the fan, for the league, or for, quite simply, revenue. The first reason they do this, and you could argue the primary reason they made this change, was they wanted to incentivize teams to not tank. Tanking has been an issue, a significant issue in the NBA for a while. And for a lot of people, it kind of ruins the competitiveness of the regular season because by the time you get towards the end of the year, there's only a handful of teams fighting for that 7th and 8th seed anyway, because so many other teams have bottomed out. So their first idea was, let's change the lottery odds. I think that has had an impact. I think we've seen teams with the 7th, 8th best odds to get the first overall pick getting up into that top 3, and teams realizing, okay, it's really not that big of a deal if we end up, kind of pushing for the playoffs late in the year rather than completely bottoming out, because sometimes teams have the best odds and they end up with the 4th pick. Obviously, you want to play the percentages a bit, but that certainly helped. And then the other idea here is the play-in tournament. And what that does is teams can be 4 or 5 games out of the technical 8th seed with 3 weeks left, and typically they'd be like, okay, that's it. We're not going to make the playoffs. But all you have to do is be the 10th seed, and then you have a shot. You got to win 2 games, and then you're in the actual real playoffs. And that incentivizes teams to not tank. There are multiple teams, as you look at the standings in each conference, where in a typical year, they probably would start resting guys and they would start tanking, but they've got a real shot to make the postseason, and that provides an experience for these players, especially for younger teams that are typically fighting for 7th and 8th seeds that they either have not experienced at this point in their career or otherwise would not have experienced. And that is really huge key elimination style games that are basically playoff experiences, right? I mean, a play-in game where if you're the 10 seed, you lose, you're done. You're the 9 seed, you lose, you're done. Or, maybe you go on a great run and then you're the 10 seed, you're 1 game away from making the actual playoffs. That's basically the equivalent of a game 7 in a postseason series. And those experiences are valuable for players, and I think that's another way that the league can kind of sell this. And it adds excitement, it adds stuff to talk about. And then, of course, the bottom line is there's more games being played. And in a typical season, this impact would be felt more than it will this year, but there's quite simply more revenue. There's more fans ideally going, again, 2 games later on down the road. There's extra TV stuff, especially in a season in which they're playing less regular season games. Kind of throwing the extra play-in tournament stuff in there certainly helps in that regard. And ultimately, that's always going to be something that the NBA and every professional sports league is going to skew towards, is how they can get more revenue out of their season, out of their postseason, out of whatever they want to add into it. And so ultimately, all of these benefits combined illustrate exactly why the NBA went towards this play-in tournament. And although Luka makes good points, it feels odd to weigh so much more heavily 2 games in comparison to the 72. There's a lot of benefits to this, and ultimately, the way you would look at it is assuming everybody's healthy, it shouldn't be an issue for a team like the Mavs, who are probably going to be the 7th seed. They're, trying to get the 6th seed, obviously. realistically, if you truly are the 7th best team, then you should be able to beat the 10th best team and the 9th best team. You know what I mean? Like, that shouldn't really be an issue. If your argument is, well, we're better than them because we had a better season, that should be enough. Okay, well, then all you have to do is prove it over 1 or 2 games and you're fine, right? And ultimately, I'm excited. Like, I love the idea of the play-in game. I think kind of the way they did it in the bubble last year, whether it be the seeding games or the play-in games, whatever the case may be, added a level of excitement and intrigue that I don't think ordinarily would have been there. And again, that's been kind of added to this season as well. When you look at teams like New Orleans, that in a typical season, when you look at where they're at in the standings, their season would be almost over, you know, but they still have plenty to fight for. And I think for that roster specifically, in addition to a handful of other young rosters around the league, getting that experience of playing in a quote unquote elimination style game is a critical one. And so ultimately, like, I can see arguments on both sides, and I can see a reason why, especially a team like the Mavs, who are right in position to potentially have to play, you know, 2 extra games just to make it into the postseason, could look at this and think, why are we doing this? This doesn't make any sense. We have earned our way here. In a typical year, we would be preparing to play, you know, the 2 seed. What are we doing here? And like, I mean, I get that, but ultimately, Luka doesn't have to like it. And all they have to do is go out and win basketball games, which you're planning on doing in the first round anyway. And who knows? I mean, we've seen scenarios in like the NCAA tournament where being, you know, playing an extra game, playing in a play-in game is not necessarily a negative and potentially allows you to go into your next series, in this case, really warm and ready to go. But UCLA was a play-in team. We just saw it, and they made the Final Four. Now, granted, college and the NCAA tournament is wildly different, you know, than what's happening with the NBA playoffs and 1 play-in game and then going into, you know, potentially 28 more games rather than, you know, 1 play-in game going into potentially 6 more games. But I think that, you know, that could potentially translate. I wouldn't be shocked to see whatever team ends up as the quote-unquote 7th seed, then going into that series against the number 2 team in the West or the East, and being really good at the beginning of that series, being really sharp, and maybe, you know, the other team being a bit rusty. You guys can let me know down in the comment section below what you think of the play-in game stuff. If you're excited about it, if you think it's weird, if you think they should even expand it. I think they're kind of in a sweet spot right now where they're respecting the results of the regular season while also allowing for some variance within, you know, that 7 through 10 spot. If they start expanding it even further, it's almost like, what's the point of the regular season? And I think it is going to be a relatively significant deterrent to tanking. It's not going to be perfect, and just really the only way for the NBA to ever completely eliminate tanking is to completely rework the way that the draft system works. But that is a draft system that is pretty consistent across most of the major professional sports leagues in the States, where the worst teams get the best draft prospects, or at least the best odds at getting a draft prospect. And in a league in the NBA in which tanking and getting a high draft pick can be so impactful, because literally everything can be changed about your franchise after getting just 1 player. Just ask the Charlotte Hornets getting LaMelo Ball. It's always going to be a significant issue, and, you know, reworking the lottery stuff, adding in the play-in tournament, all that stuff is going to help. Ultimately, it's never going to go away. We've seen over and over again over the last handful of years that, especially if you're a smaller market team, pretty much your only path towards being a really good, legitimate championship level team is to get a fantastic player in the draft, or a handful of them. Look at Milwaukee getting Giannis, what that did for their franchise, albeit that wasn't in a tanking scenario. But they're, you know, an example of a team that there's no way that they would be anywhere close to where they are right now if they never got Giannis. And if you're not going to get free agents, and if you're not going to be able to trade for stars because they don't want to go there in the first place, and they're getting better and better at leveraging where they would like to go, then the draft is pretty much the only way that you're going to be able to build a really good team. And as a result, tanking and trying to go towards the bottom is always going to be a part of the league, especially for those smaller market teams. But deterring teams from, you know, a handful of teams are going to tank every season. Oklahoma City came into this year knowing they weren't going to be good, right? Like, knowing they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league. But if you can change the number of teams tanking for the last handful of weeks of the season from 3 or 4, or from, you know, 7 or 8 to 3 or 4, I think that's a significant positive, and I think that's what the NBA is going for here. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully it adds, you know, some excitement to the season so that they continue to do this, because I think it's an awesome idea. I think it is really beneficial, and I hope it's something they continue to move forward with. But if you guys disagree, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. But yeah, that is going to be the end of the first video of the day, and I thank you guys very much for watching. As I said in the beginning, my name is Tucker. If you did enjoy the video, you can check out more videos from me. The boxes on screen, as well as on the channel as a whole. You can leave a like rating on them as well if you enjoy them, and you can check me out at various socials, and a link down in the description below to hang out with me outside of these videos. If you're looking for the second video of the day today, we're going to be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies a little bit later today. what their long-term plan is, kind of what the ceiling of this group is, and where they could potentially go in with their roster moving forward. Just kind of have a general conversation about Memphis and about their future. But yeah, with all this thing said, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.